Philip was about to leave his office when a loud noise came from the entrance, the sound of hurried footsteps and shouts. "Doctor, doctor, please help us!" Two young men rushed in, carrying another boy who looked about 18 years old. His shirt was soaked in blood. His face was pale. Philip ran toward them. "What happened?" "He fell from a motorcycle," one of the boys said. "He's not breathing well." They laid the boy on the emergency bed. Philip quickly examined him. "He needs urgent surgery," he said. Nurse Clara came in immediately, putting on her gloves. Her eyes scanned the boy from head to toe, but not with the same concern as Philip's. "This is a healthy one," she whispered to him later. "His organs will be perfect. Remember our client in Abuja? They've been waiting." Philip frowned. "No, Clara, not this one. Let's save him first." She touched his shoulder gently, smiling that familiar smile that always melted his will. "Philip, we can do both. Save him and still deliver. You worry too much. You forget how we got here?" Dr. Philip Eze was a young and talented medical doctor. He worked at a small hospital and was well loved by his patients. He was married to Flora, a beautiful woman, and they had a little boy who was just 2 years old. Life was peaceful until one terrible incident changed everything. A patient died in his care, a rich businessman with strong connections. People began to whisper that Dr. Philip had made a mistake during treatment. Before he could defend himself, the hospital management called for a meeting. "Dr. Eze," the chairman said coldly, "you have been accused of medical negligence. Until investigations are over, your license is revoked." Philip was speechless. He tried to explain that it was not his fault, but no one wanted to listen. When he got home that night, Flora was furious. "How could you let this happen, Philip?" she shouted. "I'm innocent," he pleaded. "Someone is trying to destroy me." But Flora didn't believe him. "Innocent or not, we have bills to pay. You've ruined everything." Days turned into weeks. Philip searched for work, but no hospital wanted to employ him. Money ran out. They could barely feed. Flora became bitter and nagging. Then one evening, everything went from bad to worse. Philip walked along a lonely road, lost in thought. The world felt empty. Suddenly, a car sped from nowhere and hit him hard. The driver never stopped. When he opened his eyes again, he was in a hospital bed, covered in bandages. A nurse stood beside him, smiling kindly. Her name was Clara Ibe. "You're lucky to be alive, doctor," she said gently. He frowned. "Doctor? Not anymore. They took everything from me." "I read your file," Clara replied. "You were wrongly accused. Don't give up. You can still rise again." Those words touched Philip deeply. From that moment, his life took a new turn. After leaving the hospital, Philip had nowhere to go. He rented a small old room in town and lived quietly. One afternoon, there was a knock on his door. It was Nurse Clara. "I came to see how you're doing," she said with a smile. Philip looked surprised. "You didn't have to. I'm fine, just trying to start life again." "I know someone who can help you," she said, sitting down. "You can get your license back, but you'll have to trust me." She gave him an envelope filled with names and phone numbers. They were people in high places, men who could make things happen. Months later, through Clara's connections, Dr. Philip's license was restored. He was so happy that he hugged her tightly. "Clara, I don't know how to thank you." She smiled softly. "Just don't forget who helped you rise again." Soon, with the help of her powerful friends, Philip opened a new hospital, St. Philip's Memorial Hospital. It was modern and well-equipped. But behind the success was a dark secret. The people who sponsored him wanted something in return: human organs. They would bring patients, and Philip would secretly remove some organs to sell to rich clients who needed them. At first, Philip refused. "That's illegal," he said. Clara looked into his eyes and said quietly, "Illegal or not, it's how the world works. You've suffered enough. It's time to live well." After many sleepless nights, he gave in. From that day, the hospital became a place of both healing and death. Some patients survived but left with missing organs. Others died mysteriously. Years passed. Philip became rich and respected again, but his heart was never at peace. Sometimes he sat alone in his office and whispered, "I wanted to save lives, not destroy them." But Clara always reminded him, "We're doing what we must. The world doesn't reward good men." They became lovers, Partners in sin and success. For 15 years they ruled the city, powerful, feared, and wealthy. But fate was waiting. 15 years had passed since Dr. Philip Eze opened St. Philip's Memorial Hospital with Nurse Clara. The hospital had grown big and popular. People saw him as a successful doctor, a helper of the poor, and a savior of lives. But behind the hospital walls, things were not as they seemed. Inside, Philip's heart was heavy. Every time he walked into the theater, he remembered the first patient he lost, and how far he had gone from being the man he once was. He sometimes told himself, "Just one more job and I'll stop." But Clara would always laugh and say, "Stop when we've come this far. Philip, we are too deep to turn back now." One Friday evening, rain began to fall heavily. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Philip was about to leave his office when a loud noise came from the entrance, the sound of hurried footsteps and shouts. "Doctor, doctor, please help us!" Two young men rushed in, carrying another boy who looked about 18 years old. His shirt was soaked in blood. His face was pale. Philip ran toward them. "What happened?" "He fell from a motorcycle," one of the boys said. "He's not breathing well." They laid the boy on the emergency bed. Philip quickly examined him. "He needs urgent surgery," he said. Nurse Clara came in immediately, putting on her gloves. Her eyes scanned the boy from head to toe, but not with the same concern as Philip's. "This is a healthy one," she whispered to him later. "His organs will be perfect. Remember our client in Abuja? They've been waiting." Philip frowned. "No, Clara, not this one. Let's save him first." She touched his shoulder gently, smiling that familiar smile that always melted his will. "Philip, we can do both. Save him and still deliver. You worry too much. You forget how we got here?" He sighed deeply, torn between guilt and fear. "What about his parents?" he asked. "No one has come. We can't wait forever." Minutes later, the younger brother of the injured boy arrived, crying. "Doctor, please save my brother. Do whatever it takes." Clara quickly brought out a paper and said, "Sign this consent form so we can start the operation." The young boy signed without reading. He just wanted his brother to live. Philip's hands trembled as he scrubbed in for surgery. The moment he entered the theater, he prayed silently. "God, please forgive me if I'm making a mistake. Let this boy survive." The operation began. Everything went smoothly at first. They removed one of the organs and closed him up neatly. But moments later, the boy's heartbeat began to slow down. "Pressure dropping!" Clara shouted. Philip grabbed the defibrillator. "Come on, stay with me!" he yelled. They tried everything, but the boy didn't wake up. After a long struggle, Philip stood still, sweat dripping from his forehead. He looked at Clara with sorrow in his eyes. "It's over," he whispered. "He's gone." Clara threw off her gloves angrily. "We can't lose the organ. We'll still send it to the client." But Philip couldn't speak. He just stood there, staring at the lifeless boy on the table. Something about the boy's face made his heart ache. The nose, the shape of his mouth. He shook his head, trying to push away the strange feeling. Little did he know, his past was about to return in a way he never imagined. It was already past midnight. The rain had stopped, but thunder still grumbled far away. Dr. Philip sat quietly in his office, his heart heavy. The sound of the machines in the operating room still echoed in his mind. He couldn't forget the boy's face. There was something about it that refused to leave his thoughts. The way the boy frowned, the way his lips curved, it all felt strangely familiar. He leaned back in his chair, whispering to himself, "Why does this boy look so much like me?" Just then, the door burst open. Nurse Clara walked in, holding a cold box. "It's done," she said sharply. "I've packaged the organ. The driver will deliver it before morning." Philip looked at her, anger in his eyes. "Clara, what have we done? That boy could have lived." She dropped the box on his table and crossed her arms. "Don't start again, Philip. You've been doing this for years. Why act like a saint now?" He slammed his fist on the desk. "Because this time it feels different. I can't explain it. I feel connected to that boy." Clara scoffed. "Connected? You're letting guilt confuse you. Go home, rest. Tomorrow we'll be rich again." But Philip couldn't rest. He sat alone in the dark, staring at the wall. His conscience was tearing him apart. The next morning, while Clara was at the reception handling records, a loud cry came from outside. "Where is my son? Somebody help me!" Everyone turned to see a woman rushing in. Her hair was rough, her face wet with tears. She looked exhausted from running. Dr. Philip came out of his office and froze. It was Flora. For a moment, his breath stopped. "Flora?" he whispered. She turned sharply, shocked to see him. "Philip?" The air went still. It felt like time had stopped. What are you doing here?" Philip asked, his voice shaking. "My son!" she cried. "My son was brought here last night after an accident. They said he's in this hospital. Where is he?" Philip's heart started beating fast. His hands trembled. He looked at Clara, who stood silently, confused by the sudden tension. "What's your son's name?" he asked carefully. Flora wiped her tears and said, "His name is Daniel." Philip's legs almost gave way. "Daniel?" he repeated softly. "Daniel Eze?" "Yes," she said, crying harder. "My son! Our son!" For a moment, the whole world went silent. Philip felt dizzy. The truth hit him like lightning. The boy he operated on last night, the boy whose organ they harvested, was his own son. He ran toward the ward without saying another word. Clara followed behind him. When they entered the room, Daniel was lying still on the bed, pale and lifeless. Philip fell to his knees beside him, shaking his shoulders. "Daniel, my son, wake up, please!" But the boy didn't move. Flora screamed and rushed to the bed, holding the boy's hand. "No, no, my child, my baby," she cried. Tears poured down Philip's face. "What have I done?" he whispered. "My own son. My own blood." Clara stood at the door, frozen, realizing the horror of what they had done. Philip turned to her with fury and pain in his eyes. "You did this to me, Clara. You destroyed my life. You made me a murderer, and now I've killed my own son." Clara took a step back, trembling. "Philip, I didn't know—" But Philip wasn't listening. He sank to the floor, crying like a broken man. The hands that once healed had now taken the life he loved the most. The hospital was silent. Only the sound of Flora's crying filled the air. Dr. Philip sat on the cold floor beside the hospital bed, staring at his son's lifeless body. He couldn't move. He couldn't speak. His world had ended in one night. His heart burned with regret. Every moment of his life flashed before his eyes. The day he met Flora, the day Daniel was born, the day he lost everything, and the day Clara came into his life. He whispered to himself, "I was supposed to save lives, not destroy them." Flora knelt beside him, still crying. "Philip, what happened to my son? He was fine when they brought him here. What did you do to him?" Philip tried to speak, but no words came out. His lips trembled. I didn't know, Flora. I swear I didn't know he was our son." Flora looked confused. "What do you mean you didn't know?" He bowed his head, tears falling freely. I was the one who operated on him." Flora screamed, "You what?" Her voice echoed through the hallways. Nurses and patients stopped to listen. "You killed him!" she shouted, hitting his chest. "You killed your own son!" Philip held her hands, crying. "Please forgive me, I didn't know. If I had known—" She pulled away from him, shaking her head. "You're a monster, Philip, a murderer!" Clara stood near the doorway, watching silently. She wanted to speak, but fear held her back. Philip turned toward her with red, angry eyes. "You did this! You pushed me into this life! You told me it was the only way!" Clara stepped forward, trembling. "I only showed you the path. You chose to walk it." Philip rose to his feet. "You made me believe we were saving lives, but we've been destroying families, including mine." Flora looked from one to the other, confused and heartbroken. "What are you both talking about? What life? What path?" Philip looked at her with shame. "Flora, the hospital. It's not what people think. We've been selling human organs." Flora gasped and covered her mouth. "Jesus Christ!" Philip fell to his knees again. "I wanted to stop, but I was trapped. I became a slave to money and guilt." Flora stepped back, shaking her head. "Now you see what greed does? You wanted the world and lost your own soul." She turned to look at Daniel's body and broke down again. "God, why did this have to happen?" Philip buried his face in his hands. "If I could trade places with him, I would. I swear I would." At that moment, a nurse entered the ward. "Doctor, the police are at the gate. They said they received a report about the boy's death and want to see you." Clara's eyes widened. "The police!" Philip looked up slowly, his face pale. "It's over," he said softly. "Everything is over." That day, the once famous Dr. Philip was arrested right inside his own hospital. Flora followed behind the officers, crying uncontrollably. Clara tried to escape, but they caught her before she reached the back gate. As Philip was led away in handcuffs, he looked up at the hospital signboard, St. Philip's Memorial Hospital. He shook his head sadly and said, "Maybe this is the memorial it was meant to be, not for healing, but for judgment."